6 o'clock, and the Plainfield Township Planning Commission is called to order. First on the order is approval of the agenda, and I'll take a motion at this time unless someone has an addition or subtraction.
So moved.
Thank you. Support?
Support.
Was that you, Brian?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, great, thank you. Next is approval of meeting minutes, which would be November 23rd, 2021, from that Planning Commission meeting. We've all been provided copies of that via email. Anybody have any changes other than syntax or spelling? No? Anyone want to make a motion at this time?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you.
Support.
Thank you, Kerwin. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. All right, thank you all. Next is public comments. When we do public comments, we would like you to come up here and use the podium, give us your name and address and whatever comment that you have. So I'll open that portion of the meeting now. Okay, I'm closing that portion of the meeting. Next is our agenda items, which is PUD amendment and soil removal permit. Carl, could you read that, please?
Project name, Boulder Creek Plant 18. Applicant, Mr. James Dykema and Mr. Mike Berg. Project address, 3759 Canonsburg Road and 5737 Brewer Avenue. Permanent parcel number, 41 10 23 200 013 and 41 10 24 100 022. Size of site approximately 128 acres. Action requested of the Planning Commission and project description. The applicant is requesting amendments to the Boulder Creek Planned Unit Development, PUD, and soil removal permit to extend mining operations from December 31, 2021 to December 31, 2022. The applicant is requesting this additional time to allow mining of the material necessary to create the lake feature shown on the PUD development plan.
Thank you. Someone from the applicant here to explain their request to us? Okay, come on up. Would you use the podium, please, and introduce yourselves and tell us what's going on?
My name's James Dykema. I'm here with Mike Berg and Jim Dykema. Long history of the site. Some of you were aware or on the boards 3 years ago-ish in 2018 when I think Mike went through 17 hours of public hearings to get an extension at that point. At that point, we made an agreement with Plainfield Township to have a 2-year extension of mining operations with 1 year to remove material that was stockpiled from the site. And then there's 6 months going to July 1st of 2022 to remove all the equipment necessary. We're now through that end date of 12/31/2021, and what happened was in February of 2020, right before COVID hit, we made an application to Eagle to have a permit for the inland lakes and stream permit, part 301, I believe. Anytime you have a body of water greater than 5 acres, you need a permit from Eagle. So we made that permit in February of 2020. We waited, and there's usually a 90-day review window for that, and you're supposed to hear back. We waited for months and months, had our consultants calling Eagle, and obviously COVID played a big factor in that. People were working remotely. People weren't in the office, just less communication. We finally heard back and had some meetings in late 2020, maybe early 2021, and there was 2 issues that they presented us with before they would approve our permit. One of those was wetlands near the Grand River, south of the maintenance building for Boulder Creek Golf Course, and one was the static water level in the proposed pond, where you can kind of see the pond there on the western aspect of that graphic. We then went back with our consultants, showed what we believed were the solutions for those 2 issues that Eagle brought forth. We then waited and said, here are our solutions, and we waited, and again, We waited for a long time, had our consultants calling every other week. We didn't hear anything back. In late October, we finally had another Zoom meeting with Eagle, and they presented two different issues. One of those was PFAS, known that there's PFAS under the driving range at Boulder Creek, and the other issue was the stream that comes in the culvert underneath 7 Mile. Two completely different issues, and we weren't able to provide solutions to them fast enough to get that permit approved before our drop end date of 12/31/2021. We have just recently been working, well, we've worked since that day with our consultants to try and show those solutions. We'll be remaking that modification to our permit this week to Eagle. But with that being said, we weren't able to secure that permit even after the 22 months that we've been going for it. So now we're in a position where we're asking the Planning Commission and then the Township Board to amend our restricted covenant and our PUD agreement to allow us to remove the material that's inside of the lake. As you can see on this aerial, there's 2 bodies of water. There's now 3 smaller bodies of water that are within the proposed area, because we had to be under 5 acres. And what we would like to do is have the ability to remove the rest of the material in that pond area when we can secure a permit from Eagle, and therefore create this planned use development, or planned end use development that was approved by Plainfield Township, both at the Planning Commission level and the Township Board level 3 years ago. Without having the ability to remove this material, we will have stormwater management issues and other layout issues that will have to be redesigned for the future when we can then finish the development. So that's kind of the basis of it. I don't know if you want to ask questions or.
Well, does anyone else in your group want to say anything before we turn over to our staff? You all set, Mr. Burke? Okay. Peter, anything you want to add to this? Elizabeth?
Sure. I just want to add on to this, essentially what you're looking at is a 6-month extension. They have to July of this year to finish off the site in terms of removing equipment and that type of thing from the site. Based on the narrative that the applicant gave us, they're looking, I think the time that they need to remove the remaining materials is approximately 2 months. But at the end of the day, the big issue is whether the DEQ will ultimately, Eagle will ultimately issue the permit or not. So, and then for the benefit of the audience, I want to let folks know this is the first of 2 steps. This is a public hearing tonight. The Planning Commission does recommendation to the Township Board. Ultimately, we either have another public hearing or we'll notify the entire development around there probably in March, or late February, early March. And there will be another opportunity at that point in time to discuss this matter further. The board ultimately makes the decision on whether to affirm this request to amend the PUD and the development agreement, or they can deny. So that's all I have to add to that. If there are any questions, please let me know.
Well, I think I'll turn it over to the open public hearing schedule for the meeting. So if you do have anything you want to, any comments you want to make, please take the podium, give us your name and address, make your comments too. I'm going to reserve the right to limit people if you start repeating same comments over and over. I know you want to make certain we hear it, but sometimes it just doesn't get too helpful as that goes on. So anybody liking to make any public comments? Yes, sir. Come on over here.
I am Ken Westveer. I live at 4008 Tom Morris Drive, right, Prestwick Condominiums. I've lived there for 15 years. I've owned the property for 16. And I lived right directly across from the gravel pit and whatnot. Okay, so I'm also on that other board with Jim. I don't know what the title of that one is. The Monitoring Committee. And and I heard of this before, and so I knew that they were going to ask for this. Okay, when we purchased our I just want to give you a little bit of a history on this whole thing. When we purchased our condo on October 2005, we were told that the pit would be closed to mining and processing at the end of 2008, and housing development would begin in 2009. Several extensions have since been granted for the mining for various reasons. The latest and supposedly final one was to end mining and processing December 31, 2021. So far, this has been complied with. Now, another year extension is being requested for the mining to dig a lake for the housing to be developed around. This request is to mine, haul the gravel from the site, and bring it in the driveway as well. It is also hauled away immediately after eradication. If Dykema can complete this no later than July 1st, 2021, I personally could agree with this. Now, when we talked at our last meeting, the idea was to go for 6 months. Now we're up to a year. Now this is starting to get like normal. It keeps, we never put this thing to bed. Now, and I have no qualms with going for the 6 months to get that in there, but, you know, why couldn't they have gotten the permit lot earlier? I know very well they have access to a lot of attorneys. I could have went to Eagle with this whole thing, and it seems like that just never gets completed, never follows through on. I know some things drag on, but everybody in the neighborhood is starting to worry about this and concerned this is going to go on. Next November, they'll be back again. And if they don't get it done, it's going to sit there. Now, I had, just for your information, I had my furnaces cleaned, all my ductwork cleaned again last week. I had it done 4 years ago, but this time when they cleaned it out, they took more sand out of my ductwork than they did dust. Now, you know, that just doesn't happen overnight, but, you know, in the 4 years' time, we got a lot of sand that keeps coming. I'm the first house across the road, so that's my comments.
Hi, I'm Ed Rotz. I live at 4110 Boulder Middle, Belmont. I'll be honest, last time, 3 years ago, I was one that said that I thought my grandchildren would actually be part of these meetings in the future. My great-grandchildren, actually. My grandchildren are now raised and married, and all they've ever known is this gravel pit here. I'm not opposed to the extension, but here's my question. Why wouldn't we get the approval of the DEQ? Is that who needs to give the approval, is the DEQ? Because I do trust James. 3 years ago, I didn't trust that I would be back here. I do trust James, and I think he's going to be honest with us. But my question is, why wouldn't we get the approval of the DEQ, and then James come back and say, hey, I need 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, whatever it really is, and then we would, in this meeting, you know, ask for the approval, and that we'd give the support to James to get this done. So is there a reason not to get the permit first?
Well, we just want comments rather than,
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that's my question. And then the other question I have is, there's 50 homes. I live north of 7 Mile, and there's 50 or 51 homes, and none of us were notified about this meeting. I heard about it from someone in the condos south of 7 Mile. I don't know why we weren't informed of the meeting. I don't know what that does to the validity of the meeting, or if it does or doesn't, but I would think everybody, we've always been informed before. So that's my question. I think there's a lot of distrust because the homeowners have never really been given the information. Like what I would like to see is somebody take 5 minutes, come up here and draw a picture of what we have today, what we want it to look like, and what's the advantage of it. I understand that there's money in gravel and there's a shortage of it. I have no problem with the gravel being taken out of there. But when does it stop? So that's my comment. Thank you.
Else? Yes, sir, come on up.
My name is Rick Van Koppel, and I live right there, 5892. And I just have really two
Here,
questions.
gentlemen, I need to hear. I can't hear you when you're talking.
I just really have two questions. And by the way, we're supportive of getting resolution. We really want to get something to happen in this and get finished. The problem is the endpoint, right? But I have two questions based on what you said earlier, and maybe I misheard, Jim, but I thought I heard you said that there was a permit granted, and then later in what you said, it sounded like there has not been a permit granted. And then secondly, like Ken, why is the request for a year if it takes 2 months to get it out? And we're really talking about getting it out by 6 months in July. Thank you very much.
Comment? All right, I'm closing the public hearing portion of this. I am going to turn to Peter. Is there any concerns you want to clear up?
Sure. We did verify, I think it was Mr. Ross, did come in earlier this week. We did verify the public hearing notice did go to everybody within 300 feet. In fact, we noticed within 350. Some folks in Boulder Meadow were not notified because they're outside of that distance. We did probably hit a couple of the first houses on the end of the cul-de-sac. The reason the difference is in the past, there's a bit of miscommunication. In the past, we have notified everybody within the PUD in addition to the 350. We will be doing that for the Township Board, but this is a PUD amendment. It's Planning Commission recommending body, so we're kosher with that, and we did check with the Township Attorney to verify. In regards to the timing, I can add a little bit to that. One of the issues just in general is we don't know how quickly Eagle is going to submit the permit or take care of the permit. It is a bit of a moving target. But the main reason is that when we notice for this, we have to, and the applicant was aware of this when they submitted their application, we have to give a broad range. We can always reduce the request, but we can't extend or make that request greater at a greater time. So the Planning Commission and Board has the ability to grant or shorten the request, but we have to publish it so it's out there for the public to understand that we are asking for a year. So I probably made that very convoluted, but the gist of it is we had to notice it that way for the record. Those are the only two things I think I need to add to. I think the rest of it's probably up to James.
Okay, is there anything you want to clear up?
One of the two questions about the time, and I know Ken, at that last meeting, we did want to do 6 months. That was the week of Thanksgiving. Since then, we talked with Peter, and Peter said, we have to go through the full process of going to the Planning Commission into the Township Board. Well, if we can't get into the Township Board until March, Peter's and our decision was we have to put an end date on it, like you just said. Let's put it on for a year so we don't have to come back in 3 months and have a 2-month process again. The longer that gravel sits there, the longer it takes us to then develop it. So as soon as we can get that permit, we want to get in there and get it out. To your question about if I said permit granted, I meant the permit granted through Plainfield Township to have the extension, not an Eagle permit. So that's what we need, that Eagle permit to do the greater than 5 acres lake. The other part with the timing is we're not sure when Eagle is going to hopefully approve this application for a permit. Like I said, they had 2 problems. We think we solved the 2 problems. They've now come back with 2 more problems. There's different groups in Eagle. There's the Inland Lakes and Streams permit, and there's also the PFAS, the reinforcement enforcement group that we're dealing with on 2 different avenues. And I think confidently I can say that has some pieces that play into one another. But what we'd like to see is this lake be built. I know in the monitoring committee meetings, we've seen great improvement with the relationships over the last 3 years. I think moving the scale created a lot less dust and everything for Prestwick and the other neighbors. Well, that's where it is. To your question about why not the Eagle permit first, Eagle has, once you request a permit and it's granted, it's only like a 5-year time period, so we couldn't do it in 2018. We did it as soon as we got the extension to build this permit. But right now, we are paying consultants and attorneys money to deal with Eagle on this aspect. If the township's not going to approve that aspect, well, I don't want to spend the money for consultants and attorneys to continue to get this Eagle permit if we get the Eagle permit and then Plainfield Township still says that's not feasible. So that's just my question there. In the motions that Peter has prepared for you, I'm hopeful that you'll take the recommendation to approve this. There are conditions. One of the conditions is, as it's written, says that we wouldn't be able to remove any material until an Eagle permit is granted. I would like to slightly modify this, and it might be easier if I can point it out. I'm asking if you go that way. A lot of the, can we leave that up there? Sorry. There is, he references it in his staff report and is referencing that memo that was provided to you. There's about 40,000 tons of gravel maybe in this access road that was from the scale house up to 7 Mile. We weren't taking any of that because it makes the most efficient and logical sense to have the material come up through 7 Mile, utilize the light in the traffic plan that has always been used. We feel now that we don't have as much traffic, but before we could secure an Eagle permit, if we could take basically everything that's west of this lake. So right here, where we could still get access to the lower point, because now we could build a road, because we're not in a time crunch to keep moving material. We could legit, there is no traffic there, so now we could build a new access road down, and then we could get out, maybe 20,000 tons of that material where there wouldn't be such a larger impact in that 2-month period. Another thing we'd offer is we would limit the amount of trucks, so there's not so many per day, and just utilize the time that way. But I think we feel, and we hope Plainfield Township agrees, this end use plan will be a great staple for Plainfield Township, and we want to get it done as fast as possible. The housing market is great right now. We'd love to make this development, but we need this lake in order to do the stormwater management. And with that, we need the approval to kind of get that out. So hopefully that answered the public's questions. I'm happy to answer any of your guys' questions as commissioners.
Why don't you just hang there, because I got a feeling there are going to be some questions. Jack, do you want to start?
As a matter of fact, I have a question. If we say, yes, we give you this year or whatever, don't you still need a permit to go ahead to do what you want to do?
Correct, yes.
Appears to me that it's a kind of a pass the buck situation. Eagle doesn't want to give you a permit until we say yes, and we don't want to give you a permit until Eagle says yes. So you're kind of caught in between. I don't know if you see it that way, but it kind of
Yes.
looks that way to me.
Yes.
And yet, if you look at the chronology of the whole thing, you still need an Eagle permit before you can go ahead. So why not get the Eagle permit first? And maybe they don't want to give you the permit, and maybe they'll say no, in which case there's no sense coming before us. Doesn't that make sense?
That makes sense. It's much more difficult to, I don't want to say much more difficult. There are a lot more obligations with attorneys and consultants to get the Eagle permit. And we have a restricted covenant with Plainfield Township to stop us right here. So I would think the Plainfield Township permit is in our best interest to get that before we can get the Eagle permit. And like how Peter wrote it up, there is a condition that we can't do anything until that permit is secured anyways.
Which doesn't need to be a condition because you can't do anything without the permit anyway.
Correct.
So, as I thought of, pardon me if I give comments rather than questions, but as I thought about this, there are two options here, denial and acceptance. What if we do nothing? How does that affect things? What if we just postpone it?
That would be unfortunate.
Yes, it would. But I guess what I need to know is what extra work would you need to do with your attorneys and consultants and everything that you wouldn't have to do anyway if we accept it? I mean, you would still have all that work to get the permit. They're asking questions and you have to answer those questions. And you still have to answer those questions regardless of what this body does, right?
Well, if this body denied us and then the Plainfield Township Board denied us, we wouldn't have to pursue an Eagle permit. Because even if a permit was granted by Eagle, we wouldn't be able to remove the material. So
Okay,
we
but-
wouldn't have to do that.
Right.
So all that work would be extra work at a dead cost.
But then you'd have extra stormwater issues, which
Yes,
is also
we would have to
more work.
redesign the whole roughly 128.
So for you,
acres.
it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other in a way. I mean, you
No,
got
it's-
extra work either way. If we say no, you've got the stormwater issue. If we just table it, then, or postpone it, then you still have the work to go with Eagle, which you have to do anyway. Isn't that correct?
We would have the work to do with, if you table it, we would have to consider all options on how do we best utilize the 128 acres and what that would look like. If you deny it and the township board affirms that decision of denial, then we would have to consider not requesting Eagle permit and making a whole redesign and trying to make a residential area or planned end use that would work and be feasible and a great asset to Plainfield Township. I think when the Planning Commission and the Township Board approved this 3 years ago, this was a great, and still is, a wonderful addition to Plainfield Township. And I know the monitoring committee members want to see this come to fruition. I know Carl can speak to that. We've had great talks, and and I want to be clear, we're not asking to mine anything on the site. We're not asking to run. If you drive by there, you can see almost all the equipment's already gone. We just want to remove the material and then have this lake.
And I understand that, and I think the best solution is to do what you want to do, to have the big lake. But I think it's Eagle's responsibility to work that out with you. I think that the chicken has to come before the egg, or the egg, I don't know. Anyway, that's my opinion.
Thank you, Jack. Carl?
I got two quick questions to start with. The picture that we see now, that's existing?
This was the latest GIS data
Of-
available
of
for
most
the overlay.
recent time.
Yeah, the middle lake is, this lake probably, this body of water you can see probably comes to here. There's a road right here, and this is a substantial amount of water over here as well with a cut here.
Okay. If the planning commission and the board denies this, and you have to go back and change your PUD and the stormwater drainage, will you need a Eagle permit at that time?
Don't believe so.
Okay. I got a lot of notes. First off, I was on the monitoring committee. I've been to many of the meetings that we've had. Since the operation and the scale house got moved down below, we've had very, very few complaints that I'm aware of, even from the committee members that live in the neighborhood were very few. We did receive a written letter from a Mr. James Stover just today. So that is, we've seen that as well. I'm going to go back a little ways. after you submitted for your first Eagle permit in 2020, they gave you two issues. The wetlands along the river and the static water elevation. Were these two issues resolved with them?
We believe so. When we had the next meeting, those issues were not brought up by Eagle, so I believe the solutions we provided them were sufficient then, because they didn't ask any follow-up on it or address them as issues at the current time.
Okay, so then they gave you two new issues. One was the groundwater flow of the PFOX, and the other was the stream flow from Buttersweet coming down on their 7 Mile. Are those still outstanding issues?
Those we just received from Excel Engineering last Friday, a redraw of that stream because we had to go through, and the stream we're talking about for everybody is on the north side of 7 Mile, there's that body of water that's the retainage for the Mercy Health there. Just to the east of that, there's a culvert that comes through. You can kind of see the culverts right there. That water used to come directly into this holding pond that was then used for the water to run the wash plant. We had created a modification to that stream that it runs to the north parallel to 7 Mile, and it comes down here and it back ends up into this lake. We've had Excel and the consultants drawing up what Eagle wants to see to make that stream modification with the rock beds and the different lowering of the water level to get it down that, I want to say it's 60-ish feet in elevation to get that, and that's being sent to Eagle this week. And then the PFAS one, we've done more PFAS testing and our consultants to show that this lake should not affect the groundwater flow or pull anything from the plume underneath the driving range. So no, it hasn't been.
James, pardon my interruption, but point out where the driving range is relative to the pond.
It's over here.
Yep.
So here's the driving range.
That's where the PFAS contamination.
That's where the PFAS is. It's north, the lake will be northwest of that plume and opposite of groundwater flow.
Okay. My comment on the PFOX is this. If we have 1 pond, 2 ponds, or 10 ponds, to me, it's a moot point. If one's gonna get contaminated with PFOX, they're all gonna be. So to me, the PFOX issue is there, and 1 pond or 2 ponds or 10 ponds, to me, doesn't make any difference. As you said, you're working with Eagle to resolve the other issue. At this point in time, the Township Board has approved, the Planning Commission approved, the Board has approved, and the Drain Commissioner has approved 1 pond for stormwater detention on this whole site. If this site is denied, you're gonna have to go through a whole series of permits and requests to get a different layout with different stormwater issues, with different drainage issues. That's just gotta take place, correct?
Correct.
Like was brought up, will a 1-year extension be sufficient? I understand that we're gonna have meetings here through March, and 6 months may be a better scenario, but 1 year is not out of the question. Once, if you need to remove the access drive, is that covered under the existing permit, or will you need a new Eagle permit to do that?
Not need an Eagle permit to touch the access road. We would just need the ability from Plainfield Township to remove material from the site.
Okay.
Carl, if I may add, one of the reasons why they chose to retain the gravel drive there is their other option for taking material off the site is to go off of Coit, which is not desirable.
Canonsburg.
Canonsburg,
Which we don't want.
which we do not want.
So if we take out just the part west, we can still now build a road. So we can get right where this 22A gravel stockpile is, we could build something down we could at least take out this area and get that gone, because that needs to come out for the end use plan, while still utilizing 7 Mile.
Understand. And yes, I was involved very heavily in the traffic plan, and we as the board and the commission were very strong in their requests that all truck traffic use 7 Mile. Come to the light, come south and use West River or continue south. No access off Cannonsburg, no access off Brewer. That traffic plan has been adhered to very well, and I think has worked out very well over the past several years. My last comment is what's being asked is to remove a natural resource that may be needed, may not be needed today, tomorrow, but somewhere in the future it will be needed. And once houses go in there, you're never going to get it out. I guess my last comment along those lines are technically the township, Plainfield Township, cannot tell you you can't mine there. That is a technical issue that's required or is controlled by the state of Michigan. I don't know attorney-wise or legal-wise, but I think if we denied this and you went to court and the state were able to do that.
With the agreement, the recorded agreement on the property, that's been waived. That right, that the forget the name of the term, but that right has been waived with the agreement we have with the applicant.
Waived in which way? That
Very serious consequences, excuse me.
In 2018, when we applied and did the restricted covenant, we waived the right to litigate based on that thought in the future. So.
That answers my questions for now, yes.
Thank you. Kerwin?
Well, this development, when it's built out, we hope it's gonna be there a long time. It's been a long time in coming, and you're just as aware of that as everybody else in this room. Mining operations are a by right situation where the township has very little control. And we've been trying diligently, as have you, to build some consensus among the community to draw a line in the sand, no pun intended, to get this done. Now, none of us planned on the setbacks that the COVID brought us and what the DEQ, now Eagle, brings us on a moving basis. But these agencies have challenges they've got to deal with. This PFAS is just as real to them as, getting this pond permit is for your entity. But our task is to represent the community at large and provide a recommendation to the board. We've been doing that along, and we've been kicking this can down the road since, 2011. We thought we had a finish line, and, well, the analogy I draw with my day-to-day existence is it's always raining somewhere, meaning, yep, we thought we had a project ready to go, but the earth that I wanted to move over from that field is getting rained on today. I can't do it. So there's always lots of excuses, and sometimes they're convenient. But I wouldn't be opposed to say, get the DEQ permit, and then we'll talk. Because then we can actually put a timeline to this. Right now, we're still kicking the can down the road, and I know why. Consultants and attorneys aren't inexpensive. But if we've got the answer from our DEQ brethren that says, yeah, we're not interested in that because we've got these other issues that we don't quite know how to put a bow on, PFAS, stormwater, pick your nebulous challenge of the day. Then we've got our site plan to work with, and we'll know how long that it will take to get her done. Basically what we're talking about here is you want to move some gravel because we're past our 2021 deadline. We get that. That gravel has value, as Carl alluded to. But to be fair to our neighbors, we can't keep kicking this issue down the road because of the next issue to bring to a conclusion. So I'm of the persuasion that I could sit by with Jack's initial thoughts and just say, let's just table this and let the state agency bring it to a conclusion, and we'll fall in suit right behind them. Those are my comments and thoughts.
Thank you. Brian?
I think it's sort of the same questions that we've heard already. I mean, even if we say yes, Eagle could say no. And if you were a betting man, I don't know what, who knows what Eagle's going to do. That's, my concern. We say yes, and then Eagle says no. You have to start over again as far as the plan. Is that correct? Or the layout?
Correct.
Again, I'm relatively new to the Planning Commission, and a lot of this happened before I was here. So, you're right. How do we keep kicking the deadline down farther? And even if we say yes, that still doesn't, it's government. Who says they're gonna react within 6 months or a year? Is there any guarantee does Eagle have to give a response? Are they legally obligated to respond within so much time? Peter, do you know? I don't.
I believe that they are, well, how does that usually, I'll explain it this way. They're required to respond within a certain period of time, all right? But then they can come back and say your application is incomplete, and as long as that application is incomplete, it can go on in perpetuity.
Okay, so there is no deadline to a yes or no.
Well, I think there's ultimately litigation, but yes.
I think that's all the questions I have right now.
My comments are, first of all, in regards to what Jack brought up, I can understand the total frustration dealing with two government entities because they're just not communicating with each other. I also understand the applicant's desire to get all the ducks in the row, all the cans kicked out of the road, all the, everything in line so that if and when one government entity says okay, the other one says okay, they're able to go without further ado or further delay. I understand it, I appreciate it. I also understand and appreciate at this particular point in time, we are dealing with COVID, we're dealing with PFAS, we're dealing with labor problems, we're dealing with, what's the other one? Labor issues. All of these are very unpredictable. And I think at this time to table this would be unfair to the applicant. I think to say that you have to get Eagle before you can get Plainfield Township is not fair to the applicant because we have no control over Eagle. They don't have to listen to us. They don't even have to know that we're alive to even not care. So my thought is that Dykema is trying to get everything in line with us so that they can also get everything in line whenever it kicks in with Eagle so they can begin and finish their project. And as you know, gravel is a limited source. You need gravel. I know we're running short. The stories that I hear is that the supply is getting shorter and shorter as we find less and less deposits of gravel. To not allow this particular area to be mined or in some way hold it up is an issue for the applicant and the people of Plainfield Township and the far-reaching other people that depend on the gravel that's going to be coming out of this particular area. Those are my thoughts. Anyone else want to chime in? Anything else?
Just one last comment, what Kerwin has made. The conditions that Peter has put forth to us, number one in particular, if we approve this and approve condition one, they can't do anything until they get a permit. Correct? That's the way I read this. Now, the applicant has asked for something to do, to get rid of some of the material that is necessary. I'm not opposed to that. But in response to Kerwin, I think number one takes care of the issue. They cannot do any work. If we approve this, they cannot do any work till they get an Eagle permit, period. Is that correct, Peter? That's all I have to say.
Okay. Anyone else?
we're talking about what, 40,000 tons? Is that the number that's coming?
That's what he said.
40,000 in the access road. We think we could probably get half of it, 20,000-ish, with still utilizing 7 Mile without the need of an Eagle permit. The other 20,000 would have to be taken out based on the traffic plan that I think the township would like to remove, if approved, the 75,000 to 100,000 tons from the pond through 7 Mile. We would then leave that last 20,000 underneath the access road until the very end, so we'd still be able to utilize 7 Mile. When it comes to times, if I may just try and give a little more context, this development, if you say yes, if you say no, the development's not going to be done within a year. There's going to be years and years of building houses there, so if the development's going to take, the neighbors are going to have dirt being moved around, earth being moved around, houses being built for 5 years in condos. If the township wants to say no to, this was what was approved, this is what, the best use for this land is this 12-acre lake, while we're still within this development period, because Boulder View West is in plat review. It's just needs the drain commission sign off on. That's going to be built next year. We're still going to be building and building from where we can with the sanitary lines and the stormwater lines that we can get approved. That's all still going to be ongoing. So we're just trying to continue our time to get this gravel out to make the best end use. And obviously use the gravel in the most efficient way, because it is a natural resource that's becoming very scarce. Our highest estimate's 140,000. When you get into the gravel we found on the very east side of the lake, we were 3 feet down in gravel and then it was clay. So 140 could be as low as 115, 120.
Truck to ton conversion ratio?
54 to 56. Yeah. So. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Any further discussions? No? Okay, I'll take a motion at this time.
I move to recommend to the Township Board approval of an amendment to PUD conditions of the Boulder Creek PUD, as well as associated changes to relative records and documents, including not without limitation, the restricted covenants recorded May 16, 2019, to extend until December 31st, 2022. The deadline to complete the following removal of Bank Run and 7 Mile Service Drive material from the site, removal of all mining equipment, structures, and machinery from the site, and the construction of the approved end-use plan to include minimally a 12.6 acre lake and removal of 7 Mile Road Service Drive. The Planning Commission's approval and recommendation is conditioned on the following. 1, no mining or relative activities of any kind are permitted on site, and no extension of the deadlines as set forth in this approval shall be effective unless and until the property owner submits to the township reasonable, satisfactory proof that the property owner has obtained all necessary permits from the State of Michigan Department of Environmental, Great Lakes, and Energy, authorizing the construction of a 12.6 acre lake. I have a question before I continue. Peter, I would like to adjust that they be allowed to remove the 20,000 tons off the access road.
I would suggest you do us too, yes.
And I'll put it this way, that the applicant be allowed to remove approximately 20,000 tons of gravel under the 7 Mile Service Access Road while he is preparing to get the Eagle permit. Number 2, the neighbors committee meeting will continue not less frequently than you have 6 months. I'd like to prefer to change that to 3 months so we keep a very close active weather on that.
Yeah, the original draft had 3, so that's fine.
3 months from the date of this conditional extension until December 31, 2022. Notice of such meeting shall be provided to the neighbors in the township not less than 5 days prior to a meeting date.
Any other conditions or any discussion about the changes in the conditions? Just Rod? Brian?
No.
Kerwin?
No.
Jack? All right. I have a, thank you, I have support from Kerwin. And once again, any further discussion? No? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign? Okay, thank you. You're all set. You're welcome. And the nay was Jack, for the
Correct.
record. Okay, next is staff comments. For coming, we appreciate you attending. Staff comments, Peter?
Okay, so we are expecting to have a new planning commission member in February for the February meeting. The next meeting,
Hang on. We are continuing our meeting, so if you take your conversations outside, we'd appreciate it, or you're welcome to stay. Thanks, Peter. Go ahead.
anyways, to reiterate, we're expecting to have a new planning commission member for the February meeting. The next meeting in January, which would be on the 25th, we have 2 items on that agenda. One's a public hearing for a gravel mining operation.
You're the applicant.
We
Let's
have
all do the
experience.
wave, come on, we're excited.
And the other's for Blythefield Country Club. I don't expect it to take too particularly long because that mining operation doesn't have a lot of neighbors, but you have seen it before, it's Coit Investors.
At Blythefield?
No, Coit Investors.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Blyfield's the second agenda item, now it's totally separate.
Marie heard gravel operation at Blyfield.
I did. That's exactly what I heard. Oh, no.
I think you'll be happy to see what Blythefield's planning. You've already seen it to some degree before, but this is the second phase of that redevelopment of the property. And that's about it. Elizabeth, did you have anything?
No, I'm good to go.
I'm a little distracted of late, but I'll get through it.
Oh, good. Carl?
I'll be here for the January meeting, but I will not be here for the February meeting.
Okay. Jack?
I have nothing.
I have one thing. We did not have a chance to thank Kathy Bottoма for her service. We didn't have a meeting in December. She proved to be invaluable to me. I will miss her and her expertise. And if we can ever get her back after that 1-year hiatus, I think we should try and do so.
I did reach out to her, and I also reached out to Dave Rideout, who some of you may remember, because he left for the ZBA this year for awards. She didn't want to have to deal with that kind of stuff. But Dave will be at the next board meeting when Tom's back from vacation, Tom Coleman, to get his award. So we left it.
We're adjourned.
I agree, Kathy.
She was